It's 9 a.m., sometime in the spring of 2017. In this alternate timeline, Russia invades Ukraine 5 years earlier. As of the start of this scenario, Russia has already conducted a limited invasion of Luhansk and Donetsk oblasts, but has not yet begun a full-scale invasion of the rest of Ukraine. The Russian invasion has already left several Ukrainian bases in the Donbass isolated. My objective in this scenario is to break through to one of these bases to resupply the garrison. We are expecting contact with the enemy at some point along the route, but we don't know exactly where. Moments before the start of the scenario, we received intelligence that Russian reinforcements are on the way and are expected to reach the area in about an hour. At the start of the scenario, I have a platoon of mechanized infantry mounted in BTR-70s. In about 30 minutes, I'm expecting to receive another mechanized infantry platoon mounted in BMP-2s as reinforcements. I have 2 Mi-24 Hinds to provide some air support. One of the major questions with mechanized infantry is always when to dismount. Dismount too early and you sacrifice mobility sooner than you needed to. Dismount too late and you could lose whole squads of infantry while they're still in their vehicles to single hits from AT weapons. In this case, I decided to dismount early. In hindsight, based on the information I had at the time, I may have been overcautious here. The nature of a convoy escort along a long route, when you don't know where the enemy will try to ambush you, can make it impractical to dismount to investigate every potential ambush site, especially with the added time pressure of knowing that Russian reinforcements are on the way. On the other hand, this is a combat mission scenario, not real life, so I know that the enemy is going to try to stop me somewhere along the portion of my route that is on this map. And I will be less likely to take mass casualties on contact with the enemy if my infantry are dismounted. I've also decided to hide my trucks behind this tree line for the time being. One of the more awkward aspects of any convoy escort is what to do with the trucks while I'm investigating potential ambush sites or fighting through an enemy blocking position. In this case, I'm fairly confident that this tree line should be a safe place to hide the trucks, for the rather gamey reason that a terrain feature so close to my starting positions would be an awfully sadistic spot for the scenario designed to put enemy forces. Even with the potential threat of an RPG being fired from the edge of the village up ahead and taking out a whole squad of infantry in the back of one of my BTRs, I think I really should have dropped them off a little closer. Every meter they have to run tires them out and increases the risk that they'll either have to take time to rest later or that they'll have to fight while too tired to run. I begin bounding my infantry towards the village. There's a bridge over the nearby river on the far side of the village, so the enemy knows that I have to move through it. Even if this wasn't a combat mission scenario, it would be the obvious place to try to stop my convoy.
Пішли, пішли, пішли! Прикривай, я пішов! Прикривай, я пішов!
I wouldn't be so aggressive with my BTRs if they were still filled with infantry. Now that the passenger seats are empty, I'm willing to put them at greater risk to ensure that their heavy firepower is always nearby to support my infantry. Contact. We start taking sniper fire from a tower in the middle of the village. Having so many armored vehicles with heavy machine guns around allows me to shut down the Russian sniper team almost immediately. If it had been entirely up to my infantry to do the job, it would have been much harder, would have taken much longer, and may have cost me a few more casualties. Though, of course, Russian snipers come in teams of 2, and I'd only eliminated one of them. but we're able to quickly eliminate the second one before he can inflict any more casualties.
Загін, висуваємося! Загін, позиції займати поодинці.
Прийняв, проходжу до точки виходу на ціль. Прийняв, проходжу до точки виходу на ціль.
We can start to hear my helicopter gunships approaching. I've ordered them to circle the area ahead of my advance and shoot up anything they see.
Пішли, пішли, пішли!
And as my infantry filter into the village, we start encountering more small teams of Russian infantry.
Та де ж набої, курва?
Перший на підході. Роботу дозволяю. Перший на підході. Перший на підході.
That looks like it came from the three-story building at the back of the village, just to the right of the bridge.
Роботу завершив. Головний вимкнув.
I don't wait to get a firm spot on the culprit. Instead, I order my BTR to light up the position that I assume the rocket came from, and then to reverse out of danger.
Роботу дозволяю.
First of my gunships is in position and appears to spot something in a group of farm buildings on the far side of the bridge. I hope they got whoever they were shooting at, but at the very least, I now know that there are some Russians in among those buildings.
Перший на підході.
Перший на бойовому.
I suffer a bit of a command bug here. I had meant for these BTRs to drive forward, halt for a few seconds to fire, and then reverse. Instead, they started reversing as soon as they finished driving forward. This is a bug I've encountered a handful of times before. I'm not quite sure what to do about it. It isn't so common as to make it worth abandoning shoot-and-scoot tactics, but it's common enough to be frustrating. All that really matters in the end, though, is that the few bursts they got off appear to have been enough to suppress the Russian infantry for long enough for my own infantry to gain the upper hand. In a bit of a side story to everything going on in the village, I got a tentative contact on some Russian infantry near a farm way off to the side of my main axis of advance. I'm pretty sure they're a sniper team with limited anti-armor capability, and I didn't want to pull my infantry away from the village to deal with a single sniper team, so I sent a single unsupported BTR to deal with them.
Роботу дозволяю.
BTR deals with them easily, though it does get accidentally strafed by one of my own gunships. It got pretty lucky though. No hits, no serious damage.
Перший на бойовому.
The moment we're done clearing the village on the near side of the bridge, we find ourselves skirmishing with more Russian troops in a farm on the far side of the bridge. There's another sniper team among them. So many very small teams of very lightly armed infantry, with so many sniper teams in the mix, suggests that I'm facing a Russian recon company.
Перший на підході.
My gunship spots some more Russian infantry in the next village, this time apparently in one of the houses, and sprays them with cannon fire.
Перший на підході.
One small part of my quick reaction force is raised ahead of the rest. I have a sniper team of my own riding in this small little truck. That'll be helpful.
Роботу дозволяю. Перший на підході. Бачу ціль, на бойовому. Роботу дозволяю. Перший на підході. На бойовому. Перший на підході.
I rush the snipers to the roof of the tall building closest to the bridge. It's a bit of an obvious position, I know, but it's the best spot from which they can observe the rest of my
Роботу
route.
дозволяю.
If I'm lucky, they might actually manage to shoot some Russians, but mainly I'm just hoping that they'll help me gather more information about what I'm up against.
Виходжу на ціль.
Воду дозволяю.
Перший на підході.
Прийняв. Відходжу.
Загін, пози... Пішли, пішли, пішли! Так, усі розбіглися по місцях.
I decide that some good old fire and movement is the best way to deal with the Russian sniper team. I order every weapon with a line of fire to pour into the Russian position, while I send a small team in to clear them out. Unfortunately, I mistimed my assault. The Russian team isn't quite suppressed yet when I order my assault team to move, and my team takes a casualty. As it turns out, the Russian sniper team was eliminated with my fire alone this time, so I took that casualty for nothing. Now that I've secured both sides of the bridge, I decide to move my trucks forward into the village. I don't want them to lag too far behind their escorting infantry and APCs, just in case some Russians pop up in unexpected places.
Пішли!
The main body of my reinforcements has arrived. While the heavy machine guns on my BTRs were helpful against the very light opposition I've encountered so far, The autocannons on these BMPs will be far more useful overall. I ordered these BMPs to follow a narrow dirt track in order to help increase their movement speed and reduce the chance of getting stuck in soft ground in fields. But it also occurs to me that, if this had been real life, all of that dust being kicked up by the BMPs as they race towards the front would be a problem. In-game, the AI just isn't smart enough to infer the presence of mechanized forces from a rising cloud of dust in the distance, but a human adversary absolutely would be able to infer that. If this had been real life, I might have been better off telling the BMPs to travel directly through the fields, where they may have had a lower chance of creating a highly visible cloud of dust.
Дай йому прикурити, а я в обхід. Рванули!
For the life of me, I just can't remember why I had my troops mount back up in their BTRs when they're only going to be traveling a very short distance. They're starting to get pretty tired, but the trip is far too short to offer them much opportunity to rest. As a matter of fact, they're so tired that it decided it would be best for them to keep their advance at a walking pace for the time being, despite the time pressure.
Їм зараз.
And more snipers. Wonderful. Luckily, my own snipers are already on the case, and they dispatch one Russian soldier in the house where the shooting came from. My BMP-mounted infantry have also reached the bridge by now, and I began unloading them on the right side of the road, while my BTR-mounted infantry continue clearing the farm buildings on the left. There are more troops in the house where the sniper fire came from. I'm not taking any chances, and I give them a full dose of heavy machine gun and RPG fire. That's one more group of Russians destroyed. We've even managed to take a few prisoners. I always like taking prisoners. It doesn't make much difference in the game, but in real life it's more valuable than merely killing the enemy. It's worth remembering that in war the goal isn't really to kill the enemy, but to make them stop fighting. Killing them is, of course, one way to make them stop fighting, but capturing them is even better. Obviously, from a moral perspective, anything that doesn't kill someone is better than something that does. But even from the perspective of strict military utility, it remains true that capturing the enemy is more useful than killing him. Both killing and capturing the enemy will make him stop fighting permanently. Historically, only a very small proportion of captured soldiers ever manage to escape and resume fighting. But capturing him provides a chance of getting more intelligence out of him, and, more importantly, unlike dying, surrendering is a contagious behavior. That is, a behavior that other people may observe and decide to copy. The more enemy soldiers surrender, the more that reduces the stigma of surrender within the ranks of the enemy army, and the harder it becomes for the enemy leadership to enforce against surrender. In this way, it's possible to turn enemy surrenders from a trickle into a flood, in a manner that's much harder to replicate with enemy deaths. There's even a strong argument that counting prisoners is a better metric for how close you are to victory than counting bodies, since any increase in the rate at which enemy soldiers are surrendering may be an indicator that the enemy's morale is deteriorating. But, as morally appealing as it may be to switch from trying to kill the enemy to trying to capture the enemy, that doesn't stop war from being a form of mass industrialized killing. After all, it's the knowledge that death is the alternative that can make surrender so appealing. If you want to maximize the chance that the enemy will surrender, you want to maximize the contrast in life expectancy between the two options of surrendering or not surrendering. Ideally, you want the enemy to be certain that he will live if he surrenders, and that he will die if he does not. I probably should have seen this coming. The fire is coming from the same two locations within the farm buildings that my gunship shot up earlier. Fortunately, the autocannon on one of my BMPs makes very short work of the house where the RPG fire came from. But miraculously, even after the house completely collapsed, there still appear to be survivors. And there go the two luckiest Russian soldiers I've seen so far. There's still one more pocket of resistance to go before these buildings are clear. Once again, I bring up my preferred solution to this kind of problem, 30mm autocannon.
Прийняв. Час підльоту 5 хвилин.
The remaining Russians in these buildings make the smart life decision and throw their hands up.
Отходим! Где наши? Где они?
Черт, назад!
Отходим, отходим! Отходим, отходим!
Загін за мною!
Нікуди перед нас не дінешся!
Розділитися! По одному, швидко! Розділитися! По одному, швидко!
Перший на підході.
We're now pushing up through the woods on either side of the farm buildings. In hindsight, given the time pressure, I'm not so sure I should have spent this much time dismounted, trying to completely clear the Russians out from either side of the route. It's probably resulting in lower casualties so far, but it's also slower, and moving slower means a higher chance of running into the Russian reinforcements, which will certainly result in higher casualties in the end.
Підході.
It's good to remember that, while caution can be a virtue, being overcautious can actually result in even greater losses.
Бачу ціль. На бойовому.
Перший на підході.
Роботу дозволяю.
Перший на підході.
Виходжу на ціль. Роботу дозволяю. Роботу завершив. Головний вимкнув.
Виходжу на ціль.
Роботу дозволяю. Перший на підході.
Бачу ціль на бойовому. Роботу дозволяю.
Перший на підході. Бачу ціль. На бойовому. Роботу дозволяю.
Дай йому прикурити! Хід!
Those explosions had to come from an automatic grenade launcher, probably located somewhere in the trees on the other side of the map where they could get a good field of fire.
Виходжу на ціль.
Роботу дозволяю.
Перший на підході.
Розсипалися! Розсипалися швидше!
Виходжу на ціль.
Роботу дозволяю.
Проверить снарягу. Выходим.
Перший на підході.
Виходжу на ціль. Роботу дозволяю. Перший на підході.
Перший на бойовому. Роботу дозволяю.
Перший на підході. Виходжу на ціль.
Роботу дозволяю.
Перший на підході. Виходжу на ціль. Роботу дозволяю.
Перший на підході. Перший на бойовому.
Чисто.
Роботу дозволяю.
Перший на підході.
Ну що, хлопці, по конях чи що?
Перший на бойовому.
Роботу
I didn't do a very
дозволяю.
good job of micromanaging
Роботу
this team's
завершив.
movement here.
Головний вимкнув.
I wanted them to move through the woods, but the TAC AI's pathfinding always prefers to take the path of least resistance, where I'd sometimes rather it took the path of most resistance, and they stray beyond the relative safety of the trees.
Зараз на той світ працюю. Затямив.
Ouch! This encounter is not going well. I've already suffered 2 casualties and we haven't even spotted the culprits.
Гайда сюди, до мене!
Back on the right, I've ordered one of my BMPs to pour 30mm cannon fire into the tree line where I suspect the automatic grenade launcher fire is coming from. As the turn ends and I get a chance to give it new orders, I tell it to move forward and put some rounds into the area ahead of my infantry advance on the left, in roughly the area I suspect the Russian infantry to be located. I've also ordered one of my BTRs to get in on the action. With any luck, their fire will destroy the Russians, but at the very least, I want them to be thoroughly suppressed by the time my infantry move forward again. The Russians were located a little further forward than I had guessed, but the fire from my vehicle still allowed my infantry to get just a little bit further forward, make the spot, and return effective fire.
Дай йому прикурити, а я в обхід!
And after all that, it turned out I was dealing with a single, lone Igla Manpads operator. I inflicted 1 casualty at the cost of 3 of my own. Not a good trade.
Давай, брате, я тебе крию! Загалом готові. Чекаємо на твою команду атакувати.
Притисни його до землі! Допоможи вогнем!
Тихо, тихо! Скоріше би вже із цими дурнями закінчити. А то лізуть і лізуть. Сидимо тихо, вогонь за сигналом. Сидимо тихо, вогонь за сигналом.
Загін, висуваємося!
Сиште, а ну покажи!
У мене нічого!
Швидше! Притисни його до землі!
That automatic grenade launcher is still up. I've been lucky with that thing so far, but this time my luck runs out, and I take a casualty.
Допоможи нам, а то буде запізно.
On the bright side, that latest burst has given me a much better idea of where that grenade launcher is located. I'm fairly confident that I've knocked it out this time, but if it opens fire again, I'll just rinse its position with even more autocannon fire. I'm almost out of time, and I've finally realized that I can't afford to cautiously pick my way forward anymore. I'm moving my trucks forward to follow an armored push for the exit zone on the west edge of the map. As my infantry move forward, we receive sporadic fire from scattered Russian positions a couple hundred meters away, and I suffer another casualty. Naturally, there are some more Russians near the exit zone, and my lead vehicle is immobilized by an RPG. For the life of me, I can't remember why I ordered this BMP to fire at these trees, but the result is that it ends up spooking some of my truck drivers. After moving so slowly for most of the battle, I've put myself in a position where I have little choice but to rush in these last few minutes. And just as there can be consequences for moving too slowly, there are also consequences for rushing. The timer runs down to 0. Fortunately, this scenario offers some variable extra time. If the scenario had ended promptly at the 1 hour mark, I would have failed to get so much as a single truck through to the beleaguered garrison this whole convoy is supposed to be supporting. As things are, I successfully get 3 out of my 4 trucks through to the exit zone. I'll have to hope that was enough. Back on the other side of the map, I still have some troops occupying the built-up area next to the bridge when the Russian reinforcements arrive. We managed to inflict a few casualties, but overall the first exchange does not go in our favor. I send my BMPs back over to help. It appears that the Russians intend to attack across the bridge, so if I'm lucky, my BMPs can get the drop on their BMPs by popping up on their flank. I'm not lucky. These last couple of minutes have been a complete disaster. Clearly, trying to attack the attackers in the flank isn't working on this occasion.
Тривога!
But, now that the Russians are in the narrow streets of the village, the small handful of defenders I've left there proved to be much more effective.
Усі сюди. Вижу противника.
While the fighting is ongoing at the village, I've ordered the rest of my force to continue on to reinforce the garrison. One of the Russian BMPs managed to sneak past my BTR watching this intersection. I believe that I can get the drop on it if I rush my BTR out to hit it in the rear. This is a mistake, as was made very clear by the appearance of the third BMP. The one consolation is that my infantry managed to get some revenge immediately afterwards. And with that, the variable extra time runs out and the battle is over. I've suffered a minor defeat. I managed to inflict greater losses on the enemy than they inflicted on me, with 71 Russian casualties to my 41 casualties, though I did lose 5 armored vehicles and a truck to their loss of only 2 armored vehicles. But my objective in this mission was not to inflict losses on the enemy. My objective was to resupply the garrison while suffering minimal losses myself. The Russian side gained points for the losses they inflicted on me, while I lost points for the loss of one of my 4 trucks, and the cumulative effect of that cost me the victory. But I can only resolve to do better next time, and there will be plenty more opportunities. If you enjoyed the video, despite my admittedly poor performance in this battle, then I'd appreciate it if you'd encourage the YouTube algorithm to share it with more people, as well as helping my channel grow, by liking, commenting, and subscribing.